For just about any of us in the dairy community, the core of what we do every day comes down to two things: relationships and resilience. And we are in Northeast Wisconsin today visiting with Dr. Liz Strahl from St. Anna's Veterinary Clinic, a farm kid who grew up to be a large animal vet. We talk about what it takes to build unbreakable producer relationships and how great vet work goes far beyond the arm. And we get into real life lessons so many of us can relate to about mentorship, motherhood, and managing burnout. All this and more right here today on the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. Welcome to the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. This is the podcast for dairy producers and professionals who are committed to moving our industry forward. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and each week we bring you the leaders, the lessons, and real-world stories from the people who have built the dairy business we know today and those who are shaping its future. Join us on the journey by following Up-Level Dairy on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and subscribe at upleveldairy.com to get new episodes and our Dairy Insights blogs right in your inbox. Heritage Vet Partners is the nation's leading veterinary partnership specializing in mixed and large animal practices. Heritage Vet Partners provides a unique partnership model that preserves local practice legacies, serving dairy and other livestock producers and companion animal owners through shared services, data, and strategic growth. Learn more at heritagevetpartners.com. So Liz, you knew from the beginning that medicine was a path that you wanted to follow. And there was a point in time where you had to choose, go the path of human medicine or go the path of animal. So tell me about that defining moment in your career path that led you to where you're at today.
Yeah, so I actually had a lot of the markings of a young veterinarian. I grew up on a dairy farm. I was very involved in 4-H. And then in high school, I actually got a job at the local large animal practice as like a veterinary technician. And during that time, I spent a lot of time with the vets there riding along and everything, but I wasn't 100% sold on vet med. I really enjoyed science. I enjoyed math. So I went into undergrad, a slightly non-traditional, where everyone goes animal science if they want to go to vet. I had decided that biology was going to be kind of the middle ground between the two. And I realized at that university that I really missed animals and decided that I had to take the career and become a vet.
So where did you go for your undergrad then?
Carroll University down in Waukesha. I ended up getting some good scholarships there. So they end up being kind of my choice. And they're a good one to decide, like pre-vet versus pre-med. So I was able to do one or the other or both there, and it worked out.
And where was vet school at for you?
So I'm a weirdo. So I ended up getting in a year early, and I went to University of Missouri. So down at Mizzou, and had a great time there. It was good.
Yeah. So your path led you in a few fun places.
Yeah, but everything happens for a reason.
But ultimately took you back here.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when you say here, you're now with St. Anna's, which is part of Heritage Vet Partners. How did you end up here?
Yeah, so I grew up on a dairy farm in Sheboygan County, small tie stall dairy. After I went to veterinary school, I actually landed a job in central Wisconsin. Awesome place where there was a vet that was retiring. So I kind of got the, if you want to say, like golden ticket there, where I was able to acquire bigger herds right away. I didn't have to kind of build my way up into the practice. I kind of started with my feet running on the ground, which was super fortunate. There I also had an awesome mentor, Dr. Jessica Southwick, who really kind of instilled in me the value of having producer and veterinary relationships, ones that are like unbreakable. She also is kind of the driving force for being my sounding board when things weren't going the way I wanted it to go. You know, she's the one that stayed late after clinic hours so that I could just vent about things. And she truly was the one that showed me what it takes and the struggles that it is to be a progressive woman in dairy and also have kids at the same time. And I saw those struggles. And then so for me, I knew that if I wanted my goal to become a mom, that it takes an army. And so I know I had to move a little bit closer to home. And that's where I ended up back in St. Anna.
So you just said some really strong things there, Liz. And And part of it we'll get to later, stepping into that motherhood balance and knowing that that was part of your goal. But you mentioned too that you learned from one of those great mentors. You called it an unbreakable relationship with the vet and their producer client. What does that mean? What's an unbreakable relationship?
Yeah, so we'll get into kind of what I think makes one a strong one kind of later on. But I think unbreakable is meaning that you're growing with that producer, you're becoming part of their family, you're invested in their future, kind of all the things that they can't live without you and you can't live without them is really kind of what it boils down to. She was always there. So she, whenever people called, she was there to pick up the phone. And a lot of times when you first start out, you got to be the person that's there. And then over time, you can kind of take your little steps back and find more of that balance. But when you're really starting to build a relationship, you just got to be willing to pick up the phone. She, had farms that we see all the time now, bigger farms where you're not doing the palpation anymore, but yet the farm still found enough value in her that she was able to still spend days on a big dairy just doing the simple things of communication, checking to make sure things are being done appropriately. And I saw that and I'm just like, wow, I can create value that's not only my arm. This is fantastic.
Oh, that's a good line right there. Value that's not only your arm, right?
A lot of times they tell you, you're like, you go on the farm and you just do it. And that's not the case at all. You have to build a lot of rapport with your clients prior to that. They have to be able to look at you and be like, okay, she handled this well. What happens if I do this? Or, what if I bring up this problem? How is she going to handle it? And I was able to work into those roles pretty quick, actually, and had a lot of fun doing it.
So this is where you learned kind of that people side of practice, of how to approach different people with different styles, with different timing, kind of that emotional intelligence part.
Yeah, I thankfully, with how I grew up, I kind of knew a lot of the basics of a dairy farm and the lingo and all those fun things. I had a father, I guess you want to say, that change was hard. And then I had a mom who was more of a social butterfly, and I was able to kind of take those pieces of each of them and then use that in my daily life where, there's some farmers you show up that day and they just want you to do the grunt work and be done. And then there's other ones you've got a little wiggle room to push them when you need to.
And so again, going back to where you saw yourself being in this position of being able to do the hard work, but also being able to provide these additional services, it takes time, it takes practicing, and it also takes mentoring, right? And again, go back to the mentor that you had, that you got to learn these things from. But the cool thing, Liz, is that I had an opportunity to visit with one of your colleagues, Dr. J.C. Benzing, who's at the St. Anna Clinic as well. And when I asked her who some of her greatest mentors were, she talked about you.
Yeah, probably one of the most flattering compliments someone can give you, because I still feel like most days that I am just out of vet school, and then I actually look at what year it is and realize that I am 8 years out of vet school. The day-to-day tasks have obviously gotten way easier. Palpation and DAs are just, check boxes, if you want to say. But every day there's still things I'm learning. And so when someone says, oh, you're my mentor, I was just like, oh, I never thought of myself that way. And then I started kind of reflecting on that a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? I have had some really wicked, cool students that have rode with me. And I like to think that maybe I've had some influence on them. I'm not sure 100%. Dr. JC was one of my students, so clearly I had some influence on her. One of my goals, really, I guess, when I do have a student in the truck is if my voice is not raspy by the end of the day, it generally means I have not given them everything because I want to be talking constantly. I want to be giving them all the information that I wish someone did for me when I was younger, because I know I wasn't always prepared to ask the right questions or felt like I wasn't in a safe place to do so. And so I hope that I can provide that kind of opportunity for them. I can't speak necessarily on behalf of my colleagues on the mentorship part. I know that they I am classified as very driven and very passionate about my job. And you know, they've all kind of said that to my face, and I'm very fortunate with that. And I think one of the most important things about mentorship is it's a two-way street. They have to want to learn, and I have to want to teach. And so some days are like that where I want to do both, and there are other days I might not be willing to give it my all. And that actually translates perfectly into producer relationships as well, where I have the wealth of knowledge, I have the ability to teach, but it's also having a willing participant to either take that information or not. And that's kind of where a lot of the mentorship translates to almost everything we do within the clinic, within our students, within our job.
So go back to the students that ride along in the truck with you. And it sounds like you've developed an awareness of the fact that they are likely to be impacted by this time with you. And now they're probably impacted by the time they have with anyone they ride with. What is the one thing that you would hope a student would remember and take with them when they get out of your truck at the end of that ride along? What would it be?
Yeah, ask the dumb questions. Because for me, like, if there's something you don't know, I want you to ask me it now to save you from embarrassment later. And literally be open to receiving information too. You know, if you could, I've had the best students ask open-ended questions. So I think one of the student I just had recently was like, how do you sell lung ultrasound? And then I went through and I'm like, oh, I love that question, you know, more than anything. And so we went through kind of the whole breakdown of like, this is where it could be important for someone. And they're just like, oh, that's a really good way to think about it. So even if you know the answer to a question, ask it anyways, because guess what? My colleague probably going to answer it completely different. So even if you think you know the answer, everybody's opinion's a little different. So it's good to still ask the repeating questions.
And this kind of brings up that these like multiple aspects of what it means to be a large animal vet.
I am hopelessly optimistic, and I'm sure it annoys some people, and that's definitely my mom coming through there. And then there are days too that I just want to get the work done, and you know, I may not be the most social that day, and that's just how it's going to be. But I've always told myself, and my husband and I were talking about it last night too, like, my goal though is anytime I show up on the farm, I don't care what happened to me 20 minutes ago, I'm showing up with a smile on my face, because like, there's a reason they're calling me, and it's something that's beyond their scope, or they just need help, or whatever the situation is. I can't be upset about that. And so that's always been very important to me. Like, I can be crabby up until the moment I get out of my truck, but as I get out of my truck, I better have a smile on my face. And I've held pretty true to that. I've always gotten out of my truck in a crappy situation and have been more than pleasant about it.
And that's a skill to develop in and of itself, that self-awareness and being able to kind of, you know, turn it on and turn it off a little bit, so that you're the person you want to be when you show up on the farm. And what a valuable perspective. And I hope that's something that some of those students pick up from you too when you ride along with them. And you know, so you mentioned that you are an optimistic person, right, by nature. And so, like, you know, when you were just getting started and getting out in practice, I would imagine, based on your optimism, that you were ready to just set the world on fire, right? But be honest and, you know, and real about this for a moment. What was harder? Like, what surprised you when you actually got out there to do the thing? What was harder than you expected?
I say in the practice aspect of things is, so like early career. So like less than 5 years in practice. Confrontation sometimes is actually the hands down the hardest thing. When you see something that is unacceptable, having the ability to actually talk about it is hard. So if you see, you know, for example, improper management of a cow, you know, running versus walking, you know, having their flight zone, something like that, like being able to be like, hey, like, maybe let's not do that, because a lot of times it might feel like it's not your job, but then like you realize, if I don't say something, no one's going to. And that probably first 5 years, that's hard. Along with that is establishing what your morals are. Like, what am I willing to let slide and what am I not? And I think in your early career, you really got to be strict on some of those things. Dr. JC, I would say, does an excellent job of that, of being like, I'm not okay with this. Some of us who have a little bit more of a gray area for things, I think that's a big challenge, because as you start with that little gray area, that gray area gets bigger. But if you got a strict black and white area, then as you get older and maybe more lax and things, like, there's not as much wiggle room. So first 5 years that, coming into more of the last 3 years, easily motherhood. Hands down.
So that's been a change for you in the last 3 years?
Yes.
Becoming a mom?
Yeah. So with veterinary medicine and being a large animal vet, it has been, and has been probably for longer than I realized, part of my identity. Even in vet school, it's like, oh, she's the dairy girl. Like, she likes the dairy and that's what she's going to do. And it was like, okay, yes, true. And then in practice, that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I was good at. And then I was like, okay, let's start a family. It's that the time is right and let's do that. So I was here at the time I was trying to start a family, which was great because I actually had a really good support network. So I had my parents closer, my husband's parents closer. And then even more importantly, I have another partner who also went through the kid scenario as well. Like, she already had one child. So I knew what to expect with my leadership on how it's going to be. And I was so fortunate that I had the support of the team to kind of go through all that. And figuring out kind of that work-life balance has been a huge struggle for me, because if you can't tell, I have a hard time delineating like my job and my home life. So
you take things home, I bet, huh? Like in your heart, huh?
It's funny because I actually don't talk about work at home though. When I step through the door, I don't talk about it. I'm like, this is family time, whatever. I used to, before I had kids, I did. But now I'm like, when I walk through the door, it's about them. It's about my husband. They can tell me whatever they want, but I'm going to shut off everything else.
So your types of challenges have shifted in your 8 years that you've now been full-time in practice, from kind of that, a little bit of that establishing your moral compass and deciding when and, where to assert certain things, to now this whole shift that is bigger than just showing up on the dairy every day for work, but home as well. And so, so for you, like, what did it take to get to that point where you had to realize that, okay, I got to shut this off when I walk through the door at home? How did you get to that? Because that's hard for a lot of us moms.
So AABP, American Association of Bovine Practitioners, is one of the biggest groups that us dairy vets or bovine practitioners become a part of. It shows in the first between that 5 to 10 years in practice that they see a reduction in membership in female veterinarians by 40%, where males 40%? Are 40%. Males are 15%. So women are 2.5 times more likely to leave pretty much bovine medicine. Wow. Yeah. So I think that timeline fits perfect with me. It fits perfect with a lot of other women, where it's that it becomes a lot of just constraints, whether it's time. So the on-call obviously can put a lot of pressure on families, especially if the husband doesn't have a predictable job as well. Depending on how rural it is, it's a lot of time. If you're driving hours at a time between place to place, it's a lot of pressure for maybe some of those women. It can even be maybe physical things of going through childbirth and coming back to work can be very challenging. So you have to go through a lot in order to kind of make it through. And I think a lot of women struggle with that. And I think the biggest thing why is not having a team that supports you. And so I know with St. Anna, we're a pretty tight-knit group, but that is what it boils down to, whether, it's our oldest practitioner or it's our youngest, we're all supportive of each other and what we need to do in order to be successful.
And so you have that where you're at.
Yes.
And do you believe that that's what's been able to keep you where you're at as being able to continue practicing while being a mom and now being a vet? Being a vet and now being a mom?
It's multi, or like there's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts. I think having a solid base like that, a good culture, number one. And then two, the problem is burnout. And
talk about that.
Yeah. So everyone's burnout's a little different. But for me, or for I think even most people in life, you can probably apply this to, you always have opportunity to learn. So if I'm a person that like active learning is super important to me, because I know that I will never know everything, but I'm going to try. And so I want to be able to be like, okay, if someone brings me a question, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to find out the answer. And that kind of reignites my passion in my job, because I always know that there's more I can learn. And even from a younger age of coming from a family that also, besides dairy, had teachers, I knew that pretty much what you want to say is long-term learning is very important. And it does prevent burnout. There used to be like a little wheel that I know I'd sat through something at one point, and it talked about like, okay, you start something new, you master the skill, and maybe you've heard this, and then the skill kind of, you're kind of bored of it, burnout, find a new skill, and then it's a road race. So if you practice active learning in your life, like whether it's I'm going to learn Spanish, or I'm going to start hula hooping, or whatever it might be, then make sure like you constantly have something to do.
So for you, is that a burnout avoidance strategy? And it sounds like it's something you do naturally anyway.
Yeah.
But do you find that in those moments where you are starting to just get weary, right? Mm-hmm. That when you have a challenge, or when a producer is asking you for a solution on something, does that reignites your energy and ambition?
Yeah, I would say there's probably a good 2 years in there, if I'm going to be honest with myself, where with my kids and stuff, that I was just making it day by day. I had very limited sleep, and I was juggling both. And so there was a time where some of it was just, okay, I need to make it through the day. Yeah. But for the most part, now that I'm kind of like back in it and like ready to take on the world, then now I'm back to like, okay, if they bring me something, even if I think I know the answer, I'm still going to go find evidence-based to make sure that my answer is correct.
And that's where, like, that's your sweet spot, isn't it? One of them is that information seeking, searching, validating. And so how old are the kids now?
I have a 3-year-old and an almost 2-year-old, so they're pretty close together.
Gosh.
Yeah,
now it totally makes sense. Everything you said makes sense about the 2 years of, I call it the fog.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fog where you're like, I don't even remember, and I'm not even sure if I brushed my hair for those 2 years.
Yeah, I'm sure my clients notice too. They're just like, oh, at least she's here,
But I've heard burnout defined as, it's not necessarily like doing too much of what you love. It's doing too much of what you don't love, and not enough of what you love to balance it out. And I think that speaks to what you shared too, of like, where your energy and passion is driven from, and it's that next opportunity to learn, to seek, to find, and to present, and that sounds like that's helped you be able to continue to improve upon your own, not just what you do for your clients, but really your own well-being.
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad you just said well-being, because that triggered another thing. So I kind of laid out having a stable base, having a good culture, finding something that you're passionate and driven about, and then there's this whole other little wheelhouse of a vet. And it's wellness, which you touched on, and fitness. So for me, because our job is very physical, and another reason I think a lot of people leave practice is because trying to juggle the family, having kids, and being able to perform our job is hard. You need to invest in yourself. And so I mean that in terms of, whether you have to do monthly massages, or you have to get dry needling done on your shoulders so that you can perform. Or my favorite is I'm very pro into CrossFit or strength training because we have a job that's very one-sided. And so if you're not able to balance that out, I do think that you can break down a lot quicker. So someone who, maybe don't want to go that intense, finding volleyball or finding something where you're using your body in a way that is not only for work.
Oh, that's so interesting. It kind of, what do you call it? Like functional fitness?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The things that will help you be able to keep doing what you love till you're, in your 70s or 80s or beyond, right?
Yes.
Hopefully beyond. And so how did you come upon that and discovering that that's what you need to be at your best at work and at home?
Yeah. So actually in vet school, I didn't plan on talking about this, but I actually was very overweight. And in veterinary school, I decided that if I wanted to do a good job to be a large animal vet, I needed to lose weight. And so I actually lost I think 80 pounds in vet school.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that kind of instilled in me how important eating well and fitness and all that is. And so in my first couple of years of practice, getting my feet on the ground, I just did kind of HIIT training, nothing really kind of focused. And then when I moved back here, I kind of got more into the CrossFit era, if you want to say that. And so that is their main point is functional fitness, high intensity and variable. So their goal is that anything can be thrown at you and you're able to respond. And so now I'm kind of hooked into that.
You have a job with a ton of physical and mental demands.
Mm-hmm.
How does that help you with those things?
Yeah, it makes it so that every day is easier to do the physical things. So yeah, I pretty much anything that's thrown at me, I can make sure I can do it. I'm not going to win a fight with a cow. I never will. Maybe a producer, I might be able to arm wrestle them, but otherwise.
Have you done it before?
No, but I have my colleagues though, so they can attest to that.
So you arm wrestle your colleagues?
Oh, we had a wellness challenge and it was part of it. So I'm also okay.
Did you win?
You had just had to beat one person and only one person wanted to arm wrestle me. So only one was brave enough to do it. But yeah, another tangent.
Yeah, go on. This is good. Keep going.
So for work, so in our clinic, we also have a small animal portion and there's technicians there as well. And so every year we do a wellness challenge. And last year was bingo. And in bingo, there was arm wrestle a coworker and win. And only one person elected to arm wrestle me and lost. But
for the record, make sure we don't edit that out. For the record, you won. Yeah. What was the bigger win? Actually getting the arm down or the fact that no one else was willing to do it?
I think actually getting the arm down because I'm not that strong. But yeah, no, that's too funny. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. But it plays into, kind of this conversation of really what does it take to stay in practice? And that statistic that you shared with 40% of female vets basically leaving the field, leaving practice, that's significant. And to me, when you think about how that lines up, right? I just have so much respect for the path that it takes to get to be a large animal vet, right? So you have already at that point, you've worked your tail off to get into the right school for undergrad. You've then worked your tail off to get into the vet school. No small feat within itself just to get there. Oh, and then how about those 4 years when you're in it? So just when you you get through that thick, and then you have those first few years of practice, which is another thick in and of itself. And we talked about some of those early, years for you. And just at the point when everything starts to get a little bit easier on that side, well, then it's kind of that peak of time when a lot of women decide that this is when we want to start our families. Mm-hmm. And it's just that timing and that timeline is challenging. And so I know we've touched on several factors with, just kind of wellness and health and also just keeping your mind sharp and engaged to avoid burnout. But is there anything else that you would really put your finger on and say, this is what it takes to be able to stay in this business and to be able to continue to be successful?
Yeah, and I think that boils down to your veterinary producer relationship. And I think there's a couple of key factors that make it worth it. Because like, if I don't like the people I'm working for, guess what? I can do all these other things and it doesn't matter. So what matters is I want to show up for someone, and that would be my producers. And so for me, there's kind of like three big things I would say. Trust is always number one. Like, you have to find a veterinarian that you trust. If you don't, you need to ask yourself why, and then either see if there's some reconciliation you can have with that vet, or you need to move on, because there has to be a two-way street there of like, I trust that you know what you're doing, and then I also like that you're going to be here for me. The other big thing would be like flexibility, knowing that I am a person outside of my job, as you have a life outside of your job, like knowing that things can happen. Also having the flexibility, I would say, like in my schedule, where there are some days when I show up for a producer and they just want me to be their therapist, and that's okay. And so they may not want me to be like, you know, taking on their problems or this and that. They just want me to listen, and I am happy to do that. And maybe that means it's going to take an extra 20 minutes, and I'm okay with that, and I'm going to make it work for them. Then I think the biggest thing too is like challenging your veterinarian, not being complacent with them. And so like, when I say challenge, I want to like to define it and say like, not grunt work. You know, maybe I'd have a good time on if you challenge me to do something from this distance to that, but that's not what I mean by that. I more mean, okay, hey vet, I just noticed this slight uptick in scars. Do you want to take a look at it? Or, you know, what can you do? Or can you go through the data and find areas that I need to improve in?
So you want that.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think that's what makes a veterinarian. You go from a good veterinarian to a great veterinarian. Is easily give them challenges and see if they rise to the occasion. Because I want to be pushed a little bit. I want to be a little uncomfortable. I know not everybody wants that, but for me to succeed with you, do it. Make me a little uncomfortable.
And that goes both ways, right? Like you said, that makes you better, but I mean, for those clients that are just committed to finding their next level of improvement. Like, they want that too, right? And of course, you're open to the occasional arm wrestling challenge.
Yes, of course,
which we know now. So Liz, you talk about this relationship between the vet and the producer, you know, that client advisor relationship. And it just so happens that one of your clients, we're actually at their farm today, and she's a good friend of mine as well, Tiff Schneider. And I was asking her what she sees as your strengths and what you bring to their dairy. And one of the things that Tiff talked about was, you know, just the way that you are able to really connect with the team. For one, being able to speak Spanish, and for two, you know everyone's name. You've learned those little things about people. And this, again, go back to that relationship. Like, this is where it's not just the relationship with the owner. It's not just the relationship with the manager. It's the trust and respect that you've developed with everyone who touches a cow around here. And I'm not just here, but at every other place that you go.
So although I speak a little Spanish, I wouldn't say I'm by any means fluent, but I can have a conversation with someone. But for me, it was always like, if I stepped foot on a dairy, I want to be able to be like, I know the feeder's name. I know this person's name, this person. Like, I want to know everybody's name so that if I see something, I can be like, yo, what are you doing? Or two, it's also just becoming an integral part of the family. So like, I know here, most of the guys like to drink coffee. I know at my other dairy, most of the guys drink Monster. Such a random thing to know. But you know what? When one of the guys goes above and beyond, guess what I'm bringing him that day? A Monster. And they love those things, because if I love when I show up and I don't have to say anything to them. I just wave and smile at them and say good morning, and just how their face lights up. Like, they like knowing that they are valued no matter where they are on the dairy. And I think that's how I would want to feel if I was an employee. And so therefore I want to make sure they feel the same way. And yeah, I think Tiffany's known every week I'm just like, who's that person? Who's this? So I think she's gotten a good feel of me, like always asking who people are. And I really like to know, I'm like, if they're working near me or around me, like, yeah, I want to be able to say their name and say hi to them. Like, that's just a general community respect thing.
And that's going above and beyond. Those are those details that really do make a difference. And then when it comes back to what you're talking about before, that relationship of challenging each other to be better.
By knowing people, by talking to people, is they're willing to come to you. So every once in a while, I'll notice that if something's going on the farm, say like the owner made a change or this and that, and they don't feel like it was the right change. And sometimes they're very valid because of some of the things they're seeing as a byproduct or, happening down the line. And they're more comfortable to come to me than necessarily the owner. And then I can go and ask questions. Like I can play dumb and ask questions. And that is so just enlightening and valuable because like, oh, I am trusted enough to sit there and listen to them so that I can take that and go somewhere else with it. And or it explains what I'm seeing right here. I'll be like, why is this happening? And they'll be like, oh yeah, we made this change a month ago. Oh, producer didn't tell me that. No one told me that, but they are able to tell me that. So I can kind of chase leads down a little bit quicker as well.
So that helps you in your role and your goal of helping the dairy continuously improve too.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And it comes down to people and the detail and really building that relationship, not just with the owner or the manager, but with the whole team. And so Liz, there are people that are going to be listening to this conversation today. Some of them may be dairy producers. Some of them might be vets like you, or maybe in vet school right now. Some of them may be moms like me, right? That can relate to some of the things and challenges that you shared of that transition in your own personal and professional life balance. And so what is the one thing that you hope someone listening to what you shared today would take to heart?
Yeah, I think being an active learner is probably my biggest thing, because whether you are a producer, you are a veterinarian, or even a mom, always kind of chasing that next thing, looking into the future. I think that's really what keeps people energetic and wanting to improve and wanting to do those things. I feel like as soon as you stop that ability or that want to do those things, then I think all that kind of goes away. So I do think that's really important. I guess the other thing, like, what would you tell your younger self, is what I thought of when you just asked that. And it's like, just be unapologetically you. Because like, I know there were times that I sat in a vet truck or I was on a farm where I'm like, I maybe didn't do what I should have done. And now that I'm like out and I'm about, and like I've kind of learned that people like me for who I am, that I'm not afraid then to be who I am. And I, wish I would have learned that a little bit sooner. So those are kind of my two big takeaways.
Any story that really comes to mind, or an experience that stands out of something you wish you would have done differently to be more you in that moment?
Yeah, the only thing I can really think of is just like asking more questions as a student. I think there was a pride problem with me where I was just like, okay, I have all this experience, I should know all these things. And so it really came down to, I wish I would have asked more questions earlier. And that's what I hope for any of my students. I hope for anybody who works with me, like, just ask the questions. Like, most of the time I'm gonna be like, oh, that's a great question, and just keep moving on, because if you don't know things, you can't move forward from it.
And I really value and appreciate your advice to others too, to be authentically you. Did you think about leaving practice during that time?
I don't think I ever thought about leaving practice. That was never really, I think, a big part of mine, but I was scared that I had lost some of the drive that I had, where I was showing up every day, but I wasn't able to give more of myself. And now I'm back to like, yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
You're ready to rock. And so, okay. So as you look at, the year ahead here, we're in early 2026, and knowing that you are a person that enjoys learning, challenging yourself, whether that's at work, at CrossFit, what's one big goal that you have for yourself this year, outside of vet and everything else? Like, what's one big thing you're like trying to learn, a skill, a topic? Like, what's fueling your fire?
I say if I say it out loud, I have to do it. So I'm trying to like make sure I don't hit something. I hit my one CrossFit goal already this year.
And what was it?
I did what's called level 1 training. So I actually went down to Madison and then got trained in like kind of the techniques and stuff to make myself accountable. Because with my job, I can't always attend classes, so I'm by myself a lot. Then I think professionally, and probably it's not maybe this year, but a 5 to 10, maybe a 5-year goal, would be like become boarded in dairy practice. And literally it's just because I have to know everything. And there's one way to like push myself to try and know everything is to like study and become boarded.
What does explain boarded?
Yeah, so it means, I shouldn't say it means nothing. It pretty much, I should never say that. Pretty much, I mean, so you can be in practice for a certain number of years. You have to write a research paper, and then you take this big test at the end that tests all the knowledge that you possibly could have to know about dairy practice. And then if you pass, you get pretty much letters at the end of your name that says, you're pretty smart. You know a lot about dairy. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm always like, that seems really cool. Like, I kind of want to do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, Liz, I wish you well on the next steps in your journey, whether that's your next steps with CrossFit, at home with the family, in your way that you have and build relationships with your clients and also mentor others, and on your path to getting boarded as well. Wow. And is there anything else that you want to add today?
I don't think so. I think we nailed it all.
I think you nailed it all.
But I don't know what that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Liz.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to follow the show, share this episode with your friends in the dairy community, and leave a review. At Up-Level Dairy, we're here to highlight the leaders, the lessons, and the real-world experiences that are shaping the future of our dairy industry. Find more by following us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for behind-the-scenes content and upcoming guests. And subscribe at upleveldairy.com to get new episodes and our Dairy Insights blogs right in your inbox. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and until next time, keep on learning, keep on leading, and keep up-leveling your dairy.